Welcome. This is what has been going on the Sun today, the 5th of May 2011. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Well, we have very much the same situation as we had yesterday, in that we have lots of sunspot regions popping up and disappearing all over the Sun, and yet not very much activity. The main reason for this is that the regions tend to be rather small and very short-lived, and don't have enough time to develop into major regions or produce flares. So let's take a look at them individually. Region 1200 is approaching the west limb and will disappear in the next day. Region 1206 disappeared overnight, but there are two new regions developing in the same area, as yet unnumbered. 1203 remains a single large spot. 1204 shows significant signs of development, and I'm surprised it hasn't produced more activity. 1205 is a small single spot. There are two regions trailing the 1204-1205 complex, but are yet unnumbered. Once again, we've had no C flares in the last 24 hours, but we have had rather a nice chronomass ejection, marked here with a vertical red dash. I hope you'll notice that the pattern for a chronomass ejection flare is a long extended event, whereas where there's growth in a region, then you'll get these short spiky type of events. In the stereo A data we see there's not a lot of activity going on in the regions that have recently rotated off the disk. The Solar Dynamics Observatory shows us the side of the Sun that is facing the Earth. From the sunspot and magnetic movies, we can see the development of all these small regions coming and going over the last couple of days. Particularly keep your eye on the northwest and the northeast quadrants where these small regions are quite prevalent. When region 1200 disappears over the west limb, there will be no sunspot regions in the southern hemisphere. In both the transition region and coronal movies, we can see the eruption of the filament that caused the CME. It's somewhat harder to see in the coronal movie. See if you can spot it. There, did you see it? Stereo B, which is trailing the Earth, shows us that there are no major regions due back for at least 2 or 3 days. Now let's take a look at the coronal mass ejection. We saw that filament lift off in the northeast in the 304 movie. So that's where we'd expect the coronal mass ejection to occur. And indeed, in the LASCO-SOHO data it shows a beautiful coronal mass ejection going off in the northeast. Because it is occurring at such a high latitude and in the eastern hemisphere of the Sun, we don't expect this one to be geo-effective. So once again, the composite coronal image shows the comparatively different levels of activity in the northern and southern hemisphere. In the north we have almost a contiguous band of active regions stretching all the way around the Sun, whereas in the south there's just one small patch. That eventually will rectify itself, but not for a while yet. The auroral zone is relatively quiet, with the KP index varying between 1 and 3. So in summary then, the sunspot number remains hovering around about 70, the radio sun is at 107 solar flux units, the solar wind speed has dropped considerably to about 400 km per second, and the KP index remains quiet. So my forecast remains the same as yesterday. A good chance of C flares, but a very low probability of getting an M or an X flare unless we get major growth in a new region. We should continue to get coronal mass ejections, but the chance of getting a major geomagnetic storm is quite low. If you want more details, check out the websites listed in the description box below. My apologies for my gravelly voice, but I've not been able to shake this cold. So that's it for today. Keep safe. Bye for now.